Managed mentoring for getting started in beekeeping. This is performing Walkaway Splits. I'm Kevin England. In this lesson, we'll talk about what is a walkaway split. We'll talk about some of the considerations when you perform one of these that you have to keep in mind when you make your choice as to whether to do one of these versus a traditional split. We'll explain the practice, and then we'll have some commentary about caring for and understanding the differences between this and a traditional split. A walkaway split is an alternative to a traditional split and is likely more appealing to a beginner beekeeper. As its namesake suggests, you simply split the colony in half and you walk away. In this lesson, we'll talk about the dynamics of executing a walkaway split, and we'll step you through the process. Like a traditional split, when you do a walkaway split, one box ends up with a queen and the other does not. It is customary in a walkaway split that you accept that the one without the queen will be able to raise their own queen using the resources available to them. Of course, if you found that your colony was already starting to make swarm cells, you could let the swarm cell progress to be the queen of the colony. There's an interesting consideration or sideline to think about, but I don't think you should spend a lot of time dwelling on this, but it requires being pointed out. Unlike a swarm cell, which was chosen from day one to be a queen, you're forcing the bees, the nurse bees, to pick a worker cell and provision it to be a queen cell. As researchers have told us, sometimes when they don't pick an optimal cell, and the queen that comes out is not all that she can be. Now, to allay your fears, most time when you perform a walkaway split, the queen that the colony rears is generally quite good, especially if you're doing this activity during the height of forage season in the spring nectar flow. And so it's not much of a concern, but it is a watch. And in the box that raises its own queen, you should assess the queen's performance after she gets mated and make sure that she's on the up and up. The good news for you is one of the main reasons that a walkaway split is performed is it's usually in the height of swarm season when a colony gets such a big population and you're behind and you want a quick fix. You would split the box in half to take a little wind out of their sails, and that means by proxy you're operating during the height of the season, and the queen that they're going to rear is probably well fed, well provisioned, and the colony is extremely suitable to make a good quality queen for you. So again, we feel like this is not that high of a risk and actually a fairly normal routine thing to do if you want to consider walkaway splits. Following the progression of what we just talked about, one of the key things you need to do in advance is ensure that both boxes, when split, will end up with brood in all stages. The one that does not have a queen will need the right resource of brood, meaning larva at the right age to promote to a queen. You could be proactive about this by making sure that you go through and do a hive inspection and ensure there's a distribution of brood through both of the boxes before you perform the walkaway split. In addition to brood in all stages, you'd really want to make sure that there's resources in both boxes. In order for them to well provision a queen and carry on without the queen, you want to make sure that they have a distribution of nectar and especially pollen for raising good bees. When you do your preparations, again, a proactive step is to make sure that both boxes have a distribution of resources that they'll both be able to carry forward with whatever they need in order to rebuild. Let's talk about the actual procedure, which is as simple as it gets. You place a bottom board next to your colony, and you divide the box in half, put one on one bottom board, and put the roof back on the original and cover up the new one. One thing to say about this, an aside, sometimes you intend to do a traditional split, and as you try to do that, you can't find the queen. You could change on the fly and perform a walkaway split if you're really struggling to find the queen. As you see in the demonstration, The top box had the queen, and it is in the hive on the right, where the one on the left, number 1, is left to rear their own queen. In this situation, you've created the bees inside the box that did not get the queen will recognize in short order that there is no queen. They will search the hive for the queen, and upon not finding one, they will choose worker cells in development and start to feed them. What this means is they're making emergency queens, and you will find that the queen that they create might be right in the middle of a brood nest. This is in contrast to a swarm cell, which they typically will build in the margins or elsewhere in queen cups. Here they are going to transform a worker cell into a queen. They may open it up, they may adjust it, and the traditional looking queen cell that you might be familiar with will be a little odd shaped. It's still going to be a perfectly suitable queen, it's just going to be built in an emergency fashion. It's important for you to think through the biology of what will happen with the bees that are making their own queen. It takes 16 days from the time they provision the queen for her to emerge. She usually comes out, hangs around in the hive for a couple days, gets fed, and prepares to make her nuptial flights. Depending on the weather, she can go out and get that done right away, or sometimes it's delayed. After a day or two of being mated, she comes back and she may start to lay eggs that day or the next day, and you might see a couple eggs in a cell until she gets it right. After she gets the hang of it, she should start building brood regularly, and you would see the emergence of a typical brood pattern. All of this activity from start to finish is going to take around 30 days or more, depending on the circumstances in which the queen got mated. And so you should watch this colony, make sure you prop them up and keep them secure while the queen is out getting mated. And in 30 days or so, if you do not see a queen that's mated, you should consider an alternative path of trying to supply them with a queen to get them going. One of the more interesting things to observe of a colony that is waiting to have a queen come back into production is what happens with the colony. Now you've had brood in all stages, that will run its course, and in 21 days all of those bees will emerge. The nurse bees that were busy caring for the brood will become idle, and a lot of them will age out and turn into forager bees. It's not unusual to see quite a bit of productivity for foraging for this type of colony. In addition, a lot of bees will be chored to take care of things inside the colony itself, cleaning cells, repairing comb, collecting propolis and distributing it, and so on. The bees generally have an industrious hum as they work through and wait for their queen to come in the helm. One of the late stages of a queen being prepared for laying is that you will see the bees polish and prepare areas for the queen to lay right in the center of the brood nest. This is a good sign to watch, and you should know in short order your queen will be laying and your colony will restore itself to normal operations. As to the colony that got the queen, you have to keep in mind that this is a fully functioning colony. They have a laying queen, they have plenty of resources, and a decent amount of bees. They recover quite quickly, and you have to stay proactive in keeping track of them. You'll give them a second box, they'll build out the colony to full strength, and during a forage season where you started this early, they may even get to the point where you need to super them and they'll do a honey store for you. With the queen in operation, make sure you keep on top of this hive and keep track of what they're building and stay ahead of them. To close down this lesson, just wanted to offer a little sidebar. Some even seasoned beekeepers like this type of thing. They generally don't talk about it out loud, but they perform these when the situation is right. I mentioned one condition where the colony got away from you, got too big, and you want to perform a split but you don't have time, so you just execute a walkaway split. There is the knock about whether the bees should do well with an emergency queen or not, and you could solve that if you're an advanced beekeeper by supplying a new queen and negating that risk. and so some beekeepers just practice this as part of their management routine. I want to say that for some reason this practice seems to have some sort of bad mark against it. But I think the benefits outweigh the risk, and therefore I would encourage you to consider this as a split practice to try and have in your management practice. When you're facing a situation of trying to solve a problem with the bees swarming away, this is a good one to have in your toolbox. In this lesson, we covered the virtues and instructions for how to make a walkaway split. In the next lesson, we'll talk about the Day-Marie process for swarm prevention. Following that, we're going to take a quick sidebar on how to capture swarms and what are swarm traps. Then we'll move into harvesting honey, how to get honey off the hive and process it. If you have any questions you can ask at our next online session. You can also send an email to the address on the slide. If you're watching from YouTube, you can leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next lesson.